Koidem, we were just saying about the, because Rav Mermelstein wanted to know if the Shigun of Purim is a new thing. So I think that it's at least as old as Purim itself and possibly older.
Older?
Well, if you ask like some, because carnivals or times of Shigun, like upside downness, is very, very, very old idea in culture. It's not. It's not something that we made up from Matfaket. The Megillah Esther is itself. If you read the Megillah, I have a parish on the Megillah that I should finish maybe. But if you read the Megillah itself is working with these tropes. So the whole idea of like, like there's like Rav Nachman talks about Spira Masias, how there's like certain folk tale tropes that we see, almost somewhat universal. I don't know if universal, but it's like very old, like. The prince, the push the mensch geworden prince, ben amelech ben ashif. Rav Nachman says the Spira Mas Shemasaprim Olam has a lot of side. It's just they got a little messed up. The Grimes fairy tales are basically so it's a Torah. Just we have to figure it out how, right? But he's up onto something, and some of the stories that he says are really retellings of like, not retell. He like changes them very much, but it's using the same kind of ideas. There's some modern researchers that have worked on like categorizing every kind of folk. Story that there is, like making types and categories. Yeah. And one of the very, very basic things, and
it's like a history of nonsense.
It's not nonsense. It's because there's all of these kind of stories. Like if you think about the study of myth and all these things, that way they say that the basic atom of culture is stories. It's not information, and not like science is a whole different olam. But stories are the way in which we give over information that actually works much better than all. We have Sipiritis Mitzrayim. It's like the big Yiddish example for this, right? And who knows what the story? It's not about history, right? It's about having a story that you give over. And there are certain like tropes, certain patterns that we find in every culture, and one of them is the V'nahapichi. Napichi is something, it's interesting to everyone, right? They was gemeint that he's such a nebuch, and Biddeval turned out, or these people that thought they were going to be killed, and then it's kind of silly, the Napichi of the Megillah, if you only see that part, like they were going to get killed and they killed. Okay, that's not a big Napichi, that's normal, it's a war, one guy's won, that's not really, you have to actually read Napichi much deeper and see the whole, how he sets up this whole like, Heichel HaMalchus, this whole like structure where there's, there's Achashverosh, there's the king, and there's the king's people, and they could all change in a day. Like take this random girl from who knows where, and she becomes the queen, and the other queen. All of these hipichim, all of these. Then Haman becomes the biggest tsar, and Mordechai is the biggest tsar. This is really the V'nahapichi that Megillah is getting about. The pusik that finishes V'nahapichi Ashiyishli Hayidim is the smallest V'nahapichi, really, if you think about it. And this kind of story is something it's very interesting. And it's very part of human nature. It's very part of. So
the difficult, they're changed. There are things that over there. The gzeira got changed.
Right, but it's not weird. Purim. That's why I'm saying if you just look at it in this very simple way, it's not so interesting. I think that the minute this whole shigun of Purim actually understands it as the troop shot much closer. It's really like Aliyanim Lamatal, Techtonim Lamal. It's really about Ibgeket Develt, right? And it's in other words about having unexpected. There's this Gemara, this Rabbi Yisrael Chalafta, I think, but he was asked what does God do after he finished creating the world, right? So one idea was he makes shadichim, right? And the other one was he makes ladders. That's another answer. And the same medrash, it says the same. I'm in it. Denk van de kijken de Gemara. So in Bereshis Rabbah Samachez Dalet it says like this: Matrina means like a Roman lady. Charles Rebes Bechalafta. Right? She had
does it mean a queen or something?
No, Matrina is a woman, a lady. Yeah, like lady, like we say in English, like a lady, nicht a Frau, and nicht even the heimische wie jeder is a lady. That's not a lady. Yeah, Matrinisa, and this is what it means the Shechina. But she asked how many days did God create the world? The next day. No, was that wissen Zemmels. So and then you have the famous story. She took these 1,000 knecht and made Zavigim and then proved that she can't do it. Whatever, interesting story. Okay, and then there's another pshat. It says, there's a different nisach of the story. It says, Mashpel lezeh v'mayrim lezeh, moirid lezeh, mal lezeh. Havyemer alim shoifet zeh yashpel v'zeh yurem. You're saying, what is God doing since He created the world? The world is work. So what is this is very interesting theology, right? God has to have something to do with His time, right? The Shaishis Hayam Averajis, which is like nature, it was done once, and there's rules. It doesn't have to do anything. So what is He doing since then, right? If you would be Chassidus, you would say it's keeping on being Mahava the world. That's also doesn't answer the question. If you realize what the question is, it does not negate. He's not doing anything new, right? We could talk about it.
What do you mean? It's always mamish new.
Beside it still doesn't answer the question because it still works according to our law. It's still the same as yesterday, in a very significant way.
It's very no law, isn't that based on the
but that's still not true. In other words, the way you ask this question, it doesn't answer this question. This question doesn't answer. Maybe if answers in other questions, maybe it's interesting in other ways. But this question doesn't answer. What is He doing? Right? Was become a zayin as the but this coming zayin. This is the same. It's same. That idea is very an abstract idea, right? This is having a very active idea, a much more colorful idea of God, like a much more filled-in idea of God. Right? Abstractly, yeah. If you don't even have to have the yisod of Chadesh B'tiva to say, well, the same proof that the same reason the world needs a God to start it, it always needs that. So it's like every machshava is l'malam azman. It's not very interesting even. Every hechrech, logical hechrech doesn't happen in time. So if you think of
what you do today,
if you think of creation,
you didn't say I went to the bathroom. I ate breakfast. That's what it does with the mind. What do you do? What are you doing today? You know
No, I would say something else. What you did today, you were human. You were, like you say, even think that they're natural. That's not interesting, right? So what's that? So He created the world. Okay, that took only 6 days. And what is He doing the rest of the time? So it's very interesting, and whatever the answer with the Zavik Zavigim means, right? We could get in, that's a whole other conversation. But the Kach, I wanted to get to this Osis Lumas. He says he's making ladders. In other words, this is something which humans, basically what it's talking about is things that we don't understand, right? Things that don't work according to a law, things that surprise us, right? If you think about where do we see God acting in human affairs, right? This is really what it's about, right? In human affairs in the sense of Bala Bechira, this very messy, fuzzy human world that there isn't any prediction, right? You can't just write a book that's going to say what humans are going to do for the next 10,000 years. It's not going to have any information in it. And what God is doing is making ladders. If you watch like history, if you watch human society, you'll see this very funny and thing that can only be ascribed to God in the sense that we don't really understand it. It's not suddenly this guy is up, suddenly that guy is down, and basically God is the one making the ladders. It's not making ladders, but it's that's the image of they have. And I think that the Nevi'im are very interested in this. If you read, I discussed this once over here already. If you read Tehillim, if you read the Hallel, or Shiras Chana, which is the same thing, or Yeshaya, they keep on talking about Kriyas Yamsif and making the poor rich and the down up and the up down and the same Beneshima Achas. Like this Kush Zving Kriyas Yamsif is literally a pusik. Or Kush, right? What steht in the Hallel?
Our Hallel?
Yeah, Mika Hashem Elikaina Agvil Leshovas Nashpila Leiros Bashema Mekimi Mio Fardal Me'ash Basir Me'evin Lashivim Medivim, right? And then the next article is talking about Tzias Mitzrayim, about Kriyas Yamsif. Or you have Chana, which says Hashem Moirish Shemash Mashpil Af Meroimem Ada Kuri Al Deshiva Ve'Abbas Purim Lula. This weirdness, and it's the same thing. If you can make Yabush into Yam into Yabush, you can make poor people into rich people into poor people. All these unexplained, in a certain sense unexplained. It's funny, right? If I tell you a story, it's funny, right? Basically, this is also what a joke is usually, right? And that's why we talk about jokes, right? Something that and you didn't expect that ending, right? You would have expected Vashti to be the queen, but you would have expected all of these Venahafechis. These are all very basic, very basic building blocks of interesting stories. And the Megillah is really using this and telling a story using these kind of tropes, using this kind of Venahafechian. Now in generally in societies, and we can make histories of since when or what, this has been to reenact this, just like a lot of Yom Tovim have to do with like playing out certain constants in society or certain historical constants, like the Arizal's Pshat about Pesach and Purim, that the Oiris come back. This idea is a true idea. He didn't make it up. It's actually the logic that goes behind a lot of like yearly rituals. Like we think of the spring coming back every year, or we think of it really comes back every year. And if we connect different historical things or important things, like Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is like went out of Mitzrayim, or like Rosh Hashanah, for example, recreating of the world in some sense, which is the true idea of Rosh Hashanah. It's not a Drish of Arizal. It's also historically somewhat accurate, at least. Then it's a normal thing. In other words, like we talk about Hamluchas Hashem, it's like the Melech, like the kings would have a Yom Genisir, like Yom HaMlucha. What do we do? Like reenact the coronation of the king, right? But we macht das noch einmal, because since it's every year on that day, or whichever period, whichever cycle you're working with, you're going to do like a reenaction, like to make present in this time, to make present in this time the same historical story, which is still true. He's still the king, right? But we're reenacting it. We're reenacting like the cycle of death and birth, or the cycle of he wasn't the king and now he is the king. Or you talk about Rishon like B'riyas Olam, which is God becomes the king by creating the world. Or Paisach, we become God's people by him taking us out of Mitzrayim, and we somewhat reenact that. That's a mission. It's not. It's a very old idea.
So what do you think it's true? What do you mean by that?
It's not al pi Kabbalah, it's also al pi Pshat.
Yeah.
It's not al pi Kabbalah, it's al pi Pshat. Forget, the Kabbalah is getting at the very, very basic human understanding of things. The very basic idea of the seasons coming back, which is where we get the calendar, the yearly calendar from, is this idea, really.
Why say it's coming back? Why isn't it new each time?
Oh, that's... I get the
I'm
shot.
saying that you want to be real about it, because that's what it is. No.
Not sure if that's what's real.
No.
Depends how you look at it. This is not a question of reality. It's a question of what story will you choose to tell. And in many cultures, when people talk about circular time, in many ancient cultures, many different cultures, people think of time as a circle. People really think of the spring as coming back every year, and it's true.
As linear,
as opposed to continuing, as opposed to history. There's really only one year, in a certain sense. And it's true, at least, again, this is a question of which story you want to tell and how you want to frame your year. But it's true in the sense that there is a teva to it, there's a law to it, right? The spring does come. No, but it is true.
It's a replay, the last spring.
I'm not saying it's a replay, but I'm saying that there is a law. There is something where it says it comes back every year, right? There's a regularity to it, right? You can even talk about the sun coming back to the same place and so on. That's actually true, right?
Back to the same position it was
Yeah,
before.
in some sense.
Position. It's not a,
Right.
go back to where it was.
Right. Okay. We can. This is the idea. In any case, I'm just saying one of the logics of Yom Tovim, of yearly Yom Tovim, is reenacting certain constants in human society, in history, and making them present by, Machen Keli, Yutzim Mitzrayim, Machen Keli, and Purim is about, and these are all things that exist in reality, right? That's why you talk about Yetzias, we think that Pesach is very specific, right? Okay, guy that didn't go out of Mitzrayim, he shouldn't have Pesach, but he's going to have a Pesach anyways, or something corresponding to it in some sense, because these are natural things in some sense. It just becomes a slavish in every time, in every society, in every particular ways. But all these things are going to be lav dafke, not mechiva metzias, but for the most part, all of these things are natural things, right? That if you go to Kabbalah, they get at the idea that Yetzias Mitzrayim is something that exists in nature, right? In Kabbalistic nature, in Olam Atzilas. Doesn't matter. It existed before, like we get to the idea of Avram doing Pesach before there was Pesach. What did he say? B'tzayis Yisrom Mitzrayim? No, it's B'tzayis Yisrom Mitzrayim. But the Gezuk B'tzayis, whatever the more shortish the idea of it is, right? Going out in Maitzel Lemerchav, the Chassidish way of reading it, is a very human thing. Basically everyone has a Yetzias Mitzrayim story on a national level, on a personal and a family level. There's always, you come from somewhere, right? Let's talk about that. You don't even have to going out of Mitzrayim, right? We could talk about going out of the Midbar, which is what we talk, the sickest language actually, right? We come from somewhere, we didn't come from, right? That's a very normal, it doesn't have to be, I don't know, did it start like that? I don't know, but this is a very normal story. You could find it like something corresponding to it in a lot of different Levishim, and a lot of different, and the same thing is true for Purim, and Purim. Only in the particular way in which. Yeah, but only in the but you read the Nuvi and he talks about V'shaftish v'Moav and V'shaftish v'Ammon, and you see that actually something very similar could happen to Ammon and Moav. And you see read Parshas Devurim and you see Kashenus and Hashem Lohem Es He gave us his land, their land. So you realize that of course we focus on the one that happened to us, but actually God gave B'nai Loit L'satias Al Yerishu. Just like Nasati Lechem as Eretz Canaan. It's not different. If you would read Toras Loit, you would see Ashanish Ba Hashem Leloit, Lusis Lois Eretz Moav. That's what it says. And it's very bekitze because, we're not Toras Loit. But these are structures that exist. That's why they make sense. They make sense because they're normal things. It's a normal thing to have a story of how you got your land. And our story goes like this, and someone else's story. And we actually have stories for some other people also, right? We have a story for Loit, we have a story for... Maybe we even have a story for Amulak. We have stories for Bnai Isav. We have a story for Isav. How did Isav get the Harsai? We have a story for that, right? We have stories for all of our neighbors actually also, not only for ourselves, right? Historical stories. Nachle Yunaini.
There's a different way of getting it, no?
Yes, I don't know. It says literally in Parshas Devurim, in Sefer Devurim, it says literally Kasha, just like you have yours, they have theirs, and don't touch theirs. It says that's what Moshe Rabbani says in Sefer Devurim. But the Gan can't talk about everything at once.
When they were going, they should pass by.
Yeah. It says don't take away their land because it's their land. Just like you know what do you mean? What's his name tells Melech Moav very very radical person. But it says in Sefer Moshe Rabbani says it already. Who sent the Shliach Melech Moav to the king of Moav? What did Asher Yishchok Moshe? Who said that?
Yiftach, no?
Yiftach, yeah. Okay. So
where was that?
No, I didn't remember.
Oh, I thought you were trying to bring out something.
No, yeah, so you see, okay, I'm just saying that these are structures and you could abstract it even more than that, but these are very basic structures that exist all the time. And yes, and this one belongs to the spring and this one belongs in some way, and there's other ways to organize it, but we could see that these are normal things. You would expect human society to have a Pesach or something corresponding, maybe in the hours of the best. You would expect them to have something like that. And you would also expect, and we actually find this, and we at least find a lot of corresponding examples. We expect them to have a Purim. We expect the society to have a Purim because one of the things that we humans notice is how there's these weird silumas that people mashpil vaf meroim. There's all these weird things that happen, and there should be a time to celebrate that. Well, if you want to celebrate that, that's a very good question. Do we want to celebrate that? But at least something you should notice. And the story of Purim is just how it happened in our history. Pinkt is when Azamas was stimmt git mit they kind of yesod.
I think the reason why people, the question I was asking is, you look at it, that other guy didn't get it, but like in the Seder, like he didn't get it like
that's okay. That's a very big question that we can't. I don't want to get into. No.
But that also was a Gili Alikus?
I don't know. That's a very good. I can't answer that question offhand.
I'll
regular achas. Can't answer that Torah.
We have their story and they have their story. I mean,
we can't.
What?
Okay, it's not so push it to me. No, because you can't have such a small God that can only have one people. It doesn't work like this. The days with Mila Yiriachu Melech HaGoyim is a very big, important thing. Okay. And we don't really. No, I'm not sure. I don't think. Okay, but no, but according to the Ramban, according to the old understanding, not the Rambam, that's legitimate actually. Like you done said, like if they said it's actually legitimate that they should worship their God. Yes, ours is better, and at least we believe ours to be better. But it's a very good question how to understand that. But
it's not only better. It's like
it's a different level, but it's only true on a very specific level. Okay, it's more the point is something different. The point is that this is understanding that we have, and I get from the Zohar and other places. Everything you see Avodah Zarah even doing means that it makes sense in some sense, and we can actually use the Zohar himself uses in Parshas Kisisu. The Zohar uses rituals of Avodah Zarah to understand Yiddishkeit, and the Rambam of course did that in a verkehrte way, but he actually takes the positive side and says, okay, this actually right, and the Zohar says, no, this means that it makes sense. There's a way. Now they had a mistake, so of course we don't worship the Malach, we worship God, but we should still use the Malach and so on, right? It's not shkastira. Ich weiß, wie ich mir coming to this. The kid is, so therefore you would expect to have a Purim, and like some people talk about social malice that it has, like you would expect, and we have many different cultures where there's like a day or a kifa, right? Where the König verstellt sich wie ein Mann, der Mann verstellt sich wie ein König, the Männer verstellen sich wie Frauen, the Frauen verstellen sich wie Männer. We try to like mix up the social levels, hierarchies that exist. And again, the story of Purim is about that, but there was always a minute to do things like that on Purim, and I've quoted ich bring zwei reis, so I brought you a reis from the Gemara. And that right, I told you the Gemara, and this is very funny, right? Relevant to our conversation. No, it's very, I always noticed it, I don't know, like I don't have like a very nice chat about it, but it's very cool. Because the Gemara Snedrin has this shal, what's moilech, right? What's mezrach le sitten havel le moilech? Snedrin samach dalem with bais. And the Gemara understands it to mean you doesn't mean to burn the child from moilech, it means to pass through. And there's machlokes tanuim, machlokes amaruim. What does it mean? How exactly the passing through goes? Right? Ravida is Ravida. Sorry for wiki text. Ravida eine chayvat shivren der chavura. Heichi domi. So his a guy der chavura. Machlokes. Abai gesagt shrage de livni bemitzi nirem hagise v'nirem hagise. Sorry, there's shrages. There's like shrage de livni. Rashi says it means bricks. I don't know what the shrag is. And there's fire on both sides of the bricks, and you walk on the bricks. That's Rabbi's pshat. The Rava sagt nein, kima shvarte der pirya. Tanik side the Rava, at shevra vred der chavura, vir beregel putte. So man sagt Rashi, shrag de livni means the shiras levainem gevoya. What's shrag? I don't know. Shrag means a fire, no?
Like a torch, is I don't know.
Yeah, but he says there's doesn't make sense. Anyways, Rashi says that it's like a sidewalk, and then two sides of the sidewalk. Yeah. On the two sides of the sidewalk, tell her that it's in her pocketbook. But she could have mine. On two sides of the sidewalk, we have fire, and we walk through it. Okay. And the Rava sagt, nein, kama shvarte de perje. Eine mal wieder beragla, weil koifetz beragla. You don't walk, you jump. It has to be a jumping. Kederech shatenoi kets koifetz me maya pirim. Shoyz chafira beuret, va'ash boerba, vi koifetz mesofa lesofa. So he's describing there's like a hole in the ground with a fire, like when we find the spiel is to jump over the fire. That's the Purim spiel that we do for some reason.
What?
I don't know why they did that on Purim. That's how much Vata de Purim. Or I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. It's like a Meshuart, I don't know. Anyways. So this is and there's some research about this. If you look exactly, the Urich has a little slightly different pshat, but it's definitely the point is that we jumped. Yeah, everyone touches. No, forget that. Maybe the Mashu is right that Piri over there means Purim, but the word is no. Everyone agrees that it's talking about Purim, and they used to make fires on Purim and burn something in it, apparently. So Rashi doesn't really explain what they burn.
That's fun. It sounds like they're having fun.
No, yeah, Rashi is for sure right that there's a jumping, because that's the Gemara's dik that it says not shaver any baragel. If you don't walk, you have to jump. Because if you walk, then you're not yoitz, because that's not you're not yoitz. You're not over, right? You're not yoitz of the moilech, and therefore you're not over of the issa. But so it's like a jumping thing, and Rashi doesn't say. But if you look in the Urech and other people, they explain that they used to make a tzira suman, and for 5 days before Purim they would hang him on, then they would burn it and stand around it and jump. So like Baim, this is like before like Baim.
Who's that? Wait.
This is the Urech Eirech Shav. Urech. For 4 days they would hang Purim, a few days before Shin Shabbos Zoche, and in my Purim they would make a fire and put this in the Tzayich. And he's making it into a whole circus. So they would like have like in the circus you have like a ring and you jump through it like it was a kind, you could jump through the fire. And the Archis Chaim sagt, das da minig, der blickt schon nach Purim, was schon seist schon eine alte minig von der Zeit von der Gemara to do this. Right? And he says that there's like interest somewhere with it, whatever. Okay. Some people more Makairis, but this is
all these Makairis even.
And now we have even another Makar. We know that the Romans, he bring Rosa, the Romans tried to make a Gzaira against this. Because in year 406, the Roman Empire, which was by then Christian, the Theodosian Code, this is an article, but the Theodosian Code, which is, it's here, you could find it, which is Gzairis HaMalchis. They have, one of their Gzairis is to not make this Meshvarte de Piria, obviously. That's what I'm assuming they're referring to, and because they were saying that they were burning Jesus, maybe it's making fun of Azasot Chshad.
Homer wasn't Jewish.
Erst eins verstehen, also der Aid, let's be real, the Aid wohnt in the guy, where's the Roman? They're not crazy, the Romans, for thinking that. I don't think you have to be so crazy to think about this. He brings that there's some people that spoke to Haman being on a cross.
Yeah, okay. If they hung up Obama or something, they took a picture of big Zionist, and that's very part of press. There's somebody in Yeshiva that did something with someone 2 years ago. What? No, you have to
be careful.
Yeah. Bekitzer.
You know, Converse, they don't talk against Goyim, you know? The interviews. They don't talk. They don't say.
Okay, so if you should make fun of Goyim is another question, but you should definitely make fun of Haman. And the Kitzer, the point that I'm saying is that Machen Meshige Purim is a very old meaning, and the erste to try and battle it was the Roman guy, so whatever. There's some people continuing that Messiah. But what do we see from this? I don't know how this fire thing is connected to what is the...
Yeah, you firecrackers, what do you mean? The jumping jacks. We do all that.
That's Pshat, Rashes, no? That's not Pushet Pshat. Yeah, right, but what's the... I understand. Yeah, I think that it says before Levish, I remember, okay. Yeah, right, so fire is an old way of making Freilich. Okay, so Bekitzer, and we burned the Haman effigy, like... So
we see it was kids, it was Tinaikis.
Well, this thing to take the Rebbe shall spielen Fallenberg, that's really a Chiddush, a very late Chiddush. Children, whatever, no, we support the children in their revelry.
Yeah.
Like the Marel used to. Yeah, things are for kids. Yeah, that's already a Rebbe kind of thing, like do the children thing because there's a sod. But the sod is at the kinder and it's not. Yeah, that's another level of Shigun. It's auch good. Kitzer Avas says that it's a very old minute to do shtissim on Purim. And I kept saying it might have been even before Purim. There was probably such a minhag already. Though who knows? Ich weiß nicht. I don't know exactly. It's hard to like these people. I'm sure people have different tashuras about this. But like it's what I'm really more interested in is that there's a yisod. Like there's a yisod in reality that says do taka ganzi and do Purim. Like this chilek is before Purim exists. If we do vatel Purim, it would anyways exist. Like it's not gonna help if you stop Purim. There's such a staka normal. There's der Rebbe nicht men, aber es auch du verkehrt, es auch du upside down, es auch du Purim dik. Purim dik is part of understanding. If you don't understand the Purim dik, the chaotic reversals in reality, then you don't understand reality. It's a very important part. I don't know if you should take this as the most important part, but it's an important part, and it's actually part of, like he says, that's God's job in the world. That's of course, because their whole thing is this is lafika the making sense.
They had on Simchas Torah. Nachum says we do research and the whole thing. It seems like in Little Simchas Torah was a Bahol Gedolah. No, they used to go around, they used to drink, they used to make ball. They had that condition to stop it. It seems like it's like a funny thing. No, it's a very funny thing.
So not only Litvishes, once Simchas Torah used to be a lot more lebedik. It became Simchas Torah was actually maybe more shaker than Purim, and it got tamed somehow recently. I don't know why. I don't know how this is. Yeah, maybe you know.
No, because of the Melech.
No, not only that.
Melech had ruined Simchas Torah. He's the guy that ruined it. So he said. Obviously, if he said Nachamol and the Rebbe.
No.
Yeah. No. Whatever. No, it's not. It could be. I don't know. The Lubavitch Rebbe though, because it was only geholfen. That's not a good explanation.
Shouldn't be any.
No, but only bis noch takov.
Okay, let me try and learn. Okay, so that's my word about Mashvarte de Pirian. Now on, what I forgot to say is that it seems to have something to do with the Zur. That's my funny thing. So the Gemara Gesicht Aveg how to explain how to do Moilech. Oh, Purim. That's the deeper like craziness over here. I think that it's Alderech. I don't know. I said I don't have like a good explanation of this. Like you'd say, oh, Nimus B'Mala the Moilech. You could say something like that.
Or sometimes the Gemara brings mush.
Of course, you could just bring a mush.
The Gemara is gebringt dort, bringt man sie dort bei Shabbos wegen wegen the name of a plant.
Right, it could be just like a realistic mushal. It could be. Well, I'm sure that some Darshunim will find a chat for that.
I'm saying, but people the things come in because it's not so du kannst den und den, so Shaloch zu machen auf right? So that's that's what these things.
I would say, so this is the kind of drish that you could find like a historian saying. Like probably the minig of Purim Take came from some pagan ritual of Moilach and it got transformed into Purim. And that's the kind of, that's what the kind of drish that you could tell derech ha-historia. And it might be true. That's what I'm saying.
Maybe it went that way. I mean,
Avodas Hashem, jumping in the fire.
Whatever it is,
it's like the Mazarachu. We see that the children, like Moilach was about the children.
Yeah, it's like some kind of a zach. That you're doing this, like, look at.
Well, maybe if we understand better this Moilach that the Gemara is, because I think that the Gemara is not the pshat. Historically, Moilach was burning the children. The Rashbam, the Rishonim, the Pashtunim, I think also understand it like this. The Gemara is very weird in that it understood it that you survive it. And it's like you know what it's like? It's like Achaydes Yitzchak. It's like we not only were mamtik our own avodah, they were even mamtik the avodah. We can't understand that anyone would literally burn their children. So of course, Moilach mind like it's a zayche. Like you can think of it like a zayche, or like we should have burnt you, but the mister touch of karbunas. Like I should have burnt myself, but since we don't burn people, so like that's the mister shot of karbunas. And similarly, something like this, and then I feel like something. There's like a certain how do you say transformation, like how do they call it? Like we make it more rachnistic. Like we make instead of killing the Haman, we just burn Haman's picture. There might be something like that going on for real, and it could be connected to the Zohar. That guy wrote a whole book about violence and Jewish violence. But the vart is no, he's quoting that book. And what's his name? Elliot Horowitz a book. Jewish violence to prove that we really did do the split bilbles or something, whatever. The vart is, I think I have it somewhere. The vart is, as it's also possible that there is something.
What? It's a dangerous book to write.
Verkehr. Einer geht es nicht folgen noch. Statt so zu hacken, du sagst, einer geht es folgen. No, it could be that it could be that this is part of like a ritualizing of real like but just like in a certain sense people would say that about the Hoven Hapach that I was saying. Like since there's always Tanis on the Rebbe, there's always Tanis. Why is the king? Why am I not the king? This fantasy of like make the simple person the king, and it's part of, it comes out of like this certain resentment, right? It is the king. Imagine this is the kasha guy. Imagine if in the hospital. Well, no hospitals then, but I don't know. Imagine if the two babies were mixed up. I could have been the king. So what? There's nothing really making you the king. It's kind of random, right? It's really a very this kind of story is a very big kasha on the whole mystic of you being the king. Like or we could talk about like Reb Nachman and others really are thinking about Yidden and Goyim and stuff like that. Okay, I think there's like a burden of Imod Getosh the Tzvay Neshomas in the Olam and the Tikkel over there where he talks about that the Neshomas come out of. It's very random. And it's true. It's true it's true that there's a lot of It's true that there's a lot of it's true that there's a lot of randomness in the world. Too much randomness, and that seems to be unjust. It seems to us to be wrong. Like you could talk about yeah, but like Purim, Rabbeinu Shalom, like the two Surah Lazul, right? Was the enig gesindigt that is a Surah Lazul and is a Karm Chatos, and was the enig gesindigt as the people Pir as Rosa come. There's a lot of Geudelch in the world, right? And this is a question, and some people would say, okay, because the king understands that this is a kasha, so he pretends to give place for it, like he gives it like a fake place. Instead of killing literally the king, you burn the kilim mizmaver the kenik for ein togayur, and that like releases all the tension that people have tanis. You're right. That's a like a very cynical social manipulation shot of carnivals, but it could also be, you could also see it as in a more philosophical sense, like. Yeah, it's true that a lot of things seem to be at least random, like just a girl, just pink geschehen. And we're making in it. We're making in it. We're making. Maybe give me some another, or give me some perspective. But you'll notice that the people that are very makber on their position, they don't hate Purim. Like in a lot of yeshivas, the bigger the balgav that a yeshiva is, the less Purim ruvs there are. Purim ruv is literally like. There's also very old Jewish tradition, and it's almost brutal because it's like a chutzpah. The whole job of Purim roof is to symbol in the roof. That's his job. Like to pretend, like whatever. It's like alternative, like in England they have the alternative government in the United States, the shadow government. Like there's a Purim Shakul and a Purim roof, and basically it's telling the roof, like the story with the Samaret, but it's literally the shot. Like near the roof, but like there's nothing really, no real difference. You can't verstellen wie the roof. Not so different. And sometimes they mamish make the jokes, and you see that the very serious people, they like really hate it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's too a good story for me to believe it. It's true story. Who's right?
It's a short advertising. I think it was him.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay, but that's what it's about, and you could say that it's giving a real mukim. That's true. So we don't, in some sense, there's God that's doing this whole Zayash Zayurim and it's not really justified. It's not really. Okay, fine. Yeah, but that's part of you. How crazy that idea is. That's saying it's such a gewaltige gewalt, because that's saying die meiste der Rebbe take fleet in Himmel. You could dress. I'm telling you, you could dress up a guy and make him a Rebbe. It's such a it's like a big idiot on the whole mystic of the Rebbe is the Rebbe and he's not the Rebbe. So it's not.
They want to make him so the canton is to say from the Rebbe.
Yeah, Shaina Maser.